in November. Joining me now, Matt Schlapp is chairman of the American Conservative Union. Ty Matsdorf was deputy executive director for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Matt, I'll start with you. Last night, when you're looking at some of these state-based races, a state Supreme Court election wouldn't necessarily make it to the daily briefing show, but it did because of what Scott Walker said and his worry. And let me show you what Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, said about midterm elections. We know the wind is going to be in our face. We don't know whether it's going to be a Category 3, 4, or 5. And, when Hurricane Katrina hit land, it was a Category 3. What do you think?
I don't blame these Republican leaders for sounding the alarm. It's a good thing to make sure that we don't get complacent. You win the presidency, and a lot of times it's hard to put that coalition back together in these races. Look in Wisconsin, Dana, where you have turnout at about 20%. So it's not like you're replicating the dynamics of 2016 in Wisconsin. Remember, we didn't win that at the presidential level before Donald Trump since 1984. It's a very difficult statewide. And finally, the Republican Party never did so much winning than Barack Obama was president. And we have to expect that if the Democrats field better candidates, and they did in Wisconsin, and they did in Pennsylvania 18, and if they raise more money, which they have in a couple of these special elections, you can't expect Donald Trump and the Republican national apparatus to pull you over the finish line. You're going to have to do that yourself. So you got to focus on these fundamentals in order to be successful.
Ty, I imagine you might agree with what Matt just said. I think that you might disagree with what Governor Walker said, is that the Democrats are being fueled by anger and hatred. Is that really what's getting Democrats to the polls?
No, I think that what's getting them to the polls is the passion that they feel about the Trump presidency. Look, whether it's good or bad for the country, more Americans can name the three stooges than the three branches of government. And so what most Americans think of with the government is Donald Trump. And every time they go to the ballot box from now till 2018, that's what's going to be driving them. And for Democrats, they see a presidency that's assaulting their values, assaulting what they see as sort of the democratic pillars of our country. So, of course, that's going to be a motivator.
Let me turn to the state of Texas, because Democrats have been saying for years that they're going to make it competitive. And Senator Ted Cruz launched his reelection campaign yesterday, Matt. And this comes on a day when Beto O'Rourke, the congressman from El Paso, he's a Democrat running against Ted Cruz, announced that he had raised $6.7 million in the first quarter. And Ted Cruz said this: "That's a whole lot of money. There's no doubt about that. And it has been clear for some time that the hard left is energized and they're mobilized and they're angry at the president. And we are seeing all across the country the far left giving millions of dollars to liberal Democrats running for office. And it underscores that Republicans cannot take November for granted." And yet, Matt, when the primary was held, Ted Cruz in the primary received more votes than all of the Democrats combined, 1.3 million votes. And so I just wonder here, what's going on? Are Democrats wasting their money?
Look, I think the Democrats feel like they have some momentum on their side. They've had a couple of victories in these specials, although Republicans have had a lot more. They obviously hate Ted Cruz because he stands for every conservative value there is. And there's this myth that Texas is about ready to flip, which they are many years away from the demographic trend that they think is going to be realized. So if you look at it all in totality, Republicans can't get cocky. Ted Cruz was very measured in his statement, but there is not one single fundamental dynamic in Texas that points to a Ted Cruz loss, other than Hollywood and New York is doubling down on Beto O'Rourke. And I think that's a pretty good message for Ted Cruz.
But, Ty, is Beto O'Rourke one of those different types of candidates, like Matt was saying about Connor Lamb in Pennsylvania? Is he just younger and different enough that he might get some sort of attention from the Democratic Party that maybe a Texas Democrat might not have gotten before?
I think he's probably the only candidate that we're fielding whose resume includes rock band member. But look, he is igniting a passion. Matt is right. The Democratic Party has long viewed Ted Cruz quite hostilely. And the thing about Beto O'Rourke is all his money is coming in small dollar donations. So we call that a renewable resource. So he can continue to put up these money.
This is not accurate. Ted Cruz actually gets more smaller dollar donations than Beto O'Rourke, and Beto O'Rourke is getting a lot of these contributions from out of the state. So I actually think it doesn't help you much make your grassroots argument in Texas.
I don't have the breakdown of where the money came from, but Ty, I'll give you the last word.
On Texas, I would be, Matt's right. Like, I spent the last week with one of the smartest Texas pollsters I know, and it's going to be an uphill climb. It's also an expensive state. Look, $6.7 million in a state like Wyoming, you could take everybody out to Red Lobster, but to run a Senate race in Texas is quite expensive. So it's still going to be an uphill climb.
I'm from Wyoming, and I don't even know if they still do. They have a Red Lobster? Maybe
they got it.
They have red something, but it's not lobster.
Well, it's certainly a red state.